Hello, and welcome back to part 2 of this course in managing depression. This part will focus on social withdrawal and depressive thoughts and feelings. Social withdrawal. Social withdrawal is a common behavior during depression. Last session, we mentioned several reasons for this, such as a drop in self-esteem, issues with concentration and mood. Still, social interaction is particularly important for people suffering from depression. Positive social interaction can actually disrupt depressive behavior and increase positive feelings. Such positive interactions also work against feelings of shame. Healthy relationships are a great buffer to depression and can prevent depressive thoughts from escalating. So, invest in your social network. Humans can make friends their whole life, even at a very old age. International students often feel lonely because they haven't had enough time to establish a social network. It's natural for them to prefer socializing with other international students, but a lot of international students travel back home after finishing their studies. It's common to feel lonely from time to time. It takes time to create new close relationships. Most importantly, loneliness has nothing to do with you personally. You might feel alienated being new to the country, the culture, and your place of study. So, the way you think about your loneliness matters. Knowing about external factors can prevent you from blaming yourself for feeling lonely. Thoughts. Thoughts are continuous. We can't simply shut them out or stop them. They are like a radio playing in the back of our head that we can't turn off. Our thoughts can range from being grounded in reality to being bizarre and even false. This is normal. Sometimes, certain thoughts will stand out in our minds. Such thoughts are known as trigger thoughts. They can convince us that we are inferior, unpopular, or unsuccessful. Trigger thoughts start a process of worry and rumination, but that does not make any of it true. A lot of our thoughts are actually more or less false. When we are depressed, such false, distorted, and irrelevant thoughts are common. And guess what? When we isolate ourselves from others, we're left alone to deal with these distorted thoughts, which makes us increasingly sad. Thoughts and feelings are separate things. Thoughts are rapid, quiet, and visible mental representations unavailable to others. Feelings are bodily sensations and can range from overwhelming and intense to empty and dull. Rumination and worrying. Rumination is a type of thinking that refers to continuous, recurring negative thoughts about the self. Rumination means to focus on and to analyze mistakes of the past in effort to prevent mistakes in the future. They can be recurring thoughts about why you feel depressed, and you may end up feeling like if you could only find the cause for your sadness, your depression would go away. Thoughts like, why do I feel like this? Why am I depressed? Why don't I get better? However, this won't necessarily relieve you of your depression. Your rumination might be what's making you feel insufficient and deficient. Thus, rumination is sustaining and increasing depression. How can we break this cycle of rumination and worrying? Exercise. Raise awareness to your rumination. Some ways to decrease rumination and worrying are: set your cell phone to a 1-minute countdown. In that time, try and focus on what thoughts enter your mind. If they're not too disturbing, write them down. Notice that it can be hard to pay attention to your stream of thought because thought activity is rapid, but it's not impossible. Read through your thoughts with a friendly, accepting view. They are just thoughts. Try not to blame yourself if you have negative thoughts. They are just thoughts. They don't define you as a person. Do this every day till you master it. Exercise. Dealing with your rumination. Picture yourself at a busy train station, the central station in Oslo, for example. Trains come and go, and you have no control over that. Imagine that you're traveling to Bergen. Would you just jump on the first train that stops at the platform, even if you have no idea where it is going? I guess you would say no, right? First, you would check which trains actually go to Bergen and make sure to get on the right one. This is an example that illustrates the way our thoughts work. They come and go like trains. When you are in the process of doing something, like studying for an exam or going to meet friends, if you start ruminating and worrying over a trigger thought or feeling, it's like you're jumping on the first train that shows up to the platform. That is a good time to tell yourself, stop, you will not jump on that first train. You will leave the thought alone. Postpone ruminating about it until later. Exercise. Postpone your rumination. When you have thoughts that start your rumination or worrying, try to postpone them. You might want to schedule your rumination and worry activity to a particular time of day. Set aside 10 minutes for this process. Accept but ignore every worrying thought you have until that time. Just let the thought be and tell yourself that you will think about it later. Cognitive distortions. In the 1960s, two psychologists discovered that people suffering from depression experience substantially more distorted thinking than non-depressed people. Cognitive distortions, or thought distortions, are thinking habits that cause people to perceive reality in a biased way. Here are some examples of distorted thinking. Black and white thinking is a kind of damaging thought process that might occur and makes us give up or jump to conclusions prematurely, like, I answered one question wrong, so I'm a failure. I made a mistake, so I'm a bad person. I missed one gym session, so I'll give up on exercise for the week. Another related damaging thought process is overgeneralization, which makes us jump to conclusions based on very little evidence. My partner broke up with me, so no one will ever love me. I didn't get a good grade on my exam, so I'll never do well in this class. I didn't really make any close friends this semester, so I'll never be able to join a friend group. Mind reading is a very common distortion in depression. It's when we think we know what people think or feel about us, without any idea whether it's correct or not. People suffering from depression tend to project criticism about themselves in other people's heads. Have you ever passed a group of people who are smiling and wondered if they're laughing at you? That's mind reading. But in reality, most of us don't really think about the people we pass on the street. Catastrophe thinking. Catastrophe thinking is when we're assuming the worst when facing the unknown. Statistically speaking, catastrophes are rare. Just because something is possible, it's not necessarily likely. Therefore, focusing on possible catastrophes is irrelevant and destructive. Personalization. Personalization is the belief that you are entirely to blame for something, even though you had little or nothing to do about the outcome. In fact, the situation may not be connected to you in any way at all. Example: a student in my class told me that she was struggling last semester, and it got me thinking that I should have been a better friend. Mental filtering. Mental filtering is when you focus on all the negative aspects of the situation and at the same time disqualify all of the positive aspects. Is the glass half empty or half full? Your perspective can change how you feel about the glass. Heaven's reward fallacy is a little different than all the other distortions. It's more of a worldview. This fallacy is when you expect all your sacrifices to pay off, as if someone is keeping score. You feel bitter when you're not rewarded for your sacrifices. These are only a few of the distortions the two researchers identified back in the 1960s. If you want to learn more about this, you can search online for information on cognitive distortions. Being aware of our thought distortions can help us neutralize the way they affect our understanding. It can be challenging, especially if you struggle with many of these distorted thinking patterns. But start by focusing on one of them, then go from there. Even the smallest step forward is a step forward. Exercise. Learning to see through and overwrite your distorted thinking. Try to identify any cognitive distortions. Write them down and try to argue against them. Cognitive distortion. I didn't get the position I applied for, I'm such a failure, and I'm never going to get a good job. Identifying distortion? Hey, wait a minute, that's an overgeneralization. Counterargument. Not always reaching our goals is normal. This doesn't mean that you've created a pattern of failure. Exercise. Apply your cognitive distortions to another person. Imagine a person sitting in a chair in front of you. Speak to them in distorted thinking. It could go something like this. Oh, you didn't get the job? Oh, you didn't get the position? Well, that's because you're such a failure. You're never gonna get a good job before you stop being such a loser. Most people would never speak to someone else in this way. So why is it okay to do it to yourself? Congratulations, you have just learned about the concept of self-dialogue.
Dette Nora. Etter at fadderuken var over, følte Nora at det ble vanskelig å finne sine folk. Hun ble redd for å være alene, samtidig som at det følte seg kjedelig og at alle andre rundt henne var smartere. Vi har hele tiden en indre dialog med oss selv, som mange vet. Det den samtalen vi har i tankene våre. Det ikke like mange vet, at vi kan styre denne dialogen hvis vi oppmerksomme på den. Vi skal nå se hvordan Nora snakker med seg selv om det hun synes litt vanskelig.
Jeg skjønner ikke hvordan det skal være så vanskelig å få seg venner. Du skjønner ikke det? Det ikke det at det vanskelig, det bare du som dritkjedelig. Du har virkelig ingenting morsomt eller smart å komme med. Alt du sier bare dritkleint. Det derfor ingen gidder å prate med deg. Åh, stakkars deg, Nora. Nå synes jeg altså så synd på deg. Kanskje man bare skulle droppe ut? Prøv det igjen neste år, liksom. Nei, nå trenger du noe trøst. Kanskje vi skulle bestilt oss noe mat? Ok, Nora. Hvem trenger egentlig venner? Du kan være både strong og independent, du. Hvorfor skal man ville bli kjent med folk som ikke vil bli kjent med deg? Hold deg alene, du. Det tryggest. Du kan strengt tatt bare stole på deg selv. Ja, det skikkelig vondt å føle seg ensom. Alle trenger venner, du også. Så du føler kanskje at du ikke fikk deg noen venner i fadderuka, og nå du skuffet. Men året har så vidt begynt, og det her kommer til å ordne seg for deg også. Ok, det ikke all selvdialog som passer til enhver tid. Det viktig å spørre seg selv hva det man trenger akkurat nå. Om det trøst og omsorg, eller om det et lite push bak. Da kan man styre selvdialogen sin etter det man trenger her og nå.
To summarize part 2, in this episode, we've been digging deeper into thinking patterns that are common in depression. We've also learned about the concept of self-dialogue. By knowing more about these behaviors and patterns, we can apply a friendlier self-dialogue, which in turn can help neutralize the effects of depressive thinking and make us feel better.